Tenta, your tentacular jellyfish guide through the wondrous world of classic tales. Each week we're going to embark on a thrilling adventure as we read a new chapter from a beloved childhood classic. From enchanted forests to daring quests, we'll join together through the pages of timeless stories, bringing them to life with imagination and fun. So grab your favorite cozy blanket, a cup of something warm, and let's get ready to set sail into the magic of storytelling. Don't forget to join the conversation and share your thoughts on the tale. We love hearing from our fellow friends. I'll see you in the next chapter, okay friends? Chapter 2, The Pool of Tears. Curiouser and curiouser, cried Alice. She was much too surprised that for the moment she quite forgot how to speak good English. Now I'm opening out like the largest telescope ever was. Goodbye, feet! For when she looked down at her feet, they seemed to almost be out of sight. They were getting so far off. Oh, my poor little feet. I wonder who will put on your shoes and stockings for you now, dears. I'm sure I shan't be able to. I shall be a great deal too far off to trouble myself about you. You must manage the best way you can, but I must be kind to them, thought Alice. Or perhaps they won't walk the way I want to go. Let me see. Give them a new pair of boots every Christmas. And she went on planning to herself on how she would manage it. They must go by the carrier, she thought. And how funny it will seem sending presents to one's own feet. And how odd the directions will look. Alice's right foot, exquisite, heartthrob near the fender, with Alice's love. Oh dear, what nonsense am I talking? Just at that moment, her head struck against the roof of the hall. In fact, she was now rather more than 9 feet high. And she looked at once, took upon the little golden key, and hurried off the garden door. Poor Alice! It was as much as she could do lying on one side to look through into the garden with one eye. But to get through was more hopeless than ever. She sat down and she began to cry. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, said Alice. A great girl like you. She might as well have said this. To go on crying in this way. Stop at this moment, I tell you. But she went on all the same, shedding gallons of tears until there was a large pool all around her, about 4 inches deep and reaching halfway down the hall. After a time, she had a little pattering of feet in the distance, and she hastily dried her eyes to see what was coming. It was a white rabbit returning, splendidly dressed with a pair of white kid gloves in one hand and a large fan on the other. He came trundling along in a great hurry, muttering to himself as he came. Oh, the Duchess! The Duchess! Oh, won't she be savage if I keep her waiting? Alice felt so desperate that she was ready to ask for help of anyone. So when the rabbit came near her, she began in a low, timid voice. If you please, sir. The rabbit violently dropped the white kid gloves and the fan and scurried away into the darkness as hard as he could go. Alice took up the fan and the gloves, and as the hall was very hot, she kept fanning herself all the time she kept talking. Dear, how queer everything is today. And everything yesterday is just usual. I wonder if I've changed in the night. Let me think. Was I the same when I got up this morning? I almost think I can remember feeling a little different. But if I'm not the same, next question is, who in the world am I? Oh, that's a great puzzle. And she began thinking over all the children she knew that were of the same age as herself, to see if she could have been changed for any of them. I'm sure I'm not Ada, she said, for her hair goes in such long ringlets, and mine doesn't go in ringlets at all. And I'm sure I can't be Mabel, for I know all sorts of things, and she knows very little. Besides, she's she, and I'm I. And oh dear, how puzzling it all is. I'll try if I know all the things I've used to know. Let me see. 4 times 5 is 12. And 4 times 6 is 13. And 4 times 7 is... Oh dear. I shall never get to 20 at that rate. However, the multiplication table doesn't signify, let's say, geography. London is the capital of Paris, and Paris is the capital of Rome. And Rome, no, that's all wrong. I'm certain. I must have been changed from Mabel. I'll try and say, how doth thou little... And she crossed her hands on her lap as if she were saying lessons and began to repeat it. But her voice sounded hoarse and strange, and the words did not come across the same as they used to. How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail, and pour the waters of the Nile on every golden scale? How cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly he spreads his claws, and welcomes little fishes in with gently smiling jaws. I'm sure those are not the right words, said poor Alice, and her eyes filled with tears again as she went on. I must be Mabel after all, and I shall have to go and live in that poky little house and have next to no toys to play with, and oh so many lessons to learn. No, I've made my mind up about it. If I'm Mabel, I'll stay down here. It'll be no use of putting their heads down and saying, come on, Bona dear. I shall only look up and say, who am I then? Tell me that first, and then if I like being that person, I'll come up. If not, I'll stay down here till I'm somebody else. But, oh dear, cried Alice with a sudden burst of tears, I do wish they would put their heads down. I'm so very tired of being all alone here. And as she said this, she looked down at her hands, and she was surprised to see that she had put on one of the rabbit's white little gloves while she was talking. How could I have done that? She thought. I must be growing small again. She got up and went to the table to measure herself by it, and found that, as nearly as she could guess, she was now about 2 feet high, and she was going on shrinking rapidly. She soon found out that the cause of this was the fan she was holding, and she dropped it hastily, just in time to save herself from shrinking away altogether. Whew, that was a narrow escape, said Alice, a good deal frightened at the sudden change, but very glad to find herself still in existence. And now for the garden. And she ran with all her speed back to the little door, but alas, the little door was shut again, and that little golden key was lying on the glass table as before. And things are worse than ever, thought the poor child, for I was never so small as this before, never, and I shall declare it's too bad, that it is. And she said these little words, her foot slipped, and another houses, and behind them a railway station. However, she soon made out that she was in the pool of tears, which she had wept when she was 9 feet high. "I wish I hadn't cried so much," said Alice as she swam about, trying to find her way out. "I shall be punished for it now, I suppose, by being drowned in my own tears. That will be such a queer thing, to be sure. However, everything is queer today." Just then she heard something splashing about the pool far away off, and she swam nearer to make out what it was. At first she thought it must be a walrus or a hippopotamus, but then she remembered how small she was now, and she soon made out that it was only a mouse that had slipped in just like herself. Would it be of any use now, thought Alice, to speak to this mouse? Everything is so out of the way down here that I think I should very likely it could talk. At any rate, there's no harm in trying. So she began. "Oh, mouse, do you know the way out of this pool? I am very tired of swimming about here. Oh, mouse." Alice thought this might be the right way of speaking to a mouse. She had never done such a thing before. But she remembered having seen in her brother's Latin grammar, "A mouse of a mouse, to a mouse, a mouse. Oh, mouse." The mouse looked up at her rather inquisitively and seemed to her to wink with one of its little eyes. But it said nothing. "Perhaps it doesn't speak English," thought French. "I dare say it's a French mouse, come over with William the Conqueror." For with all her knowledge of history, Alice had no very clear notion of how long ago anything had happened. So she began again. "Où est mon château?" which was the first sentence in her French lesson book. The mouse gave a sudden leap out of the air, and it seemed to quiver all over in fright. "Oh, I beg your pardon," cried Alice hastily, afraid that she had hurt the poor animal's feelings. "I quite forgot you don't like cats." "Not like cats?" cried the mouse in a shrill, passionate voice. "Would you like cats if you were me?" "Well, perhaps not," said Alice in a soothing tone. "Don't be angry about it. And yet I wish I could show you our cat Dinah. I think you'd fancy a cat if you could only see her. She's such a dear, quiet thing," Alice went on half to herself as she swam lazily. "And she sits purring so nicely by the fire, licking her paws and washing her face. And she is such a soft, sweet, nice thing to nurse. And she's such a capital for one of catching mice." "Oh, I beg your pardon," cried Alice again, for this time the mouse was bristling all over, and she felt certain it must really be offended. "We won't talk about her any more if you'd rather not." "We indeed," cried the mouse, who was trembling down to the end of its tail. "As if I would talk on such a subject. Our family always hated cats. Nasty, lowly, vulgar things. Don't let me hear the name again." "I won't indeed," said Alice in a great hurry to change the subject of conversation. Are you fond of dogs?" The mouse did not answer, so Alice went on eagerly. "There is such a nice little dog near our house. I should like to show you. A little bright-eyed terrier, with, such long, brown, curly hair, and it'll fetch things when you throw them. And it'll sit up and beg for its dinner, and all sorts of things. I can't remember half of them now. And it belongs to a farmer, and he says it's so useful. It's worth £100. He says it kills all the rats and oh dear!" cried Alice in a sorrowful tone. commotion in the pool as it rained. So she called softly back after it. Mouse dear, do come back again, and we won't talk about cats or dogs either if you don't like them. When the mouse heard this, it turned around and swam slowly back to her. Its face was quite pale with passion, Alice thought, and it said in a low, trembling voice, well, let's get back to the shore, and then I'll tell you of my history, and you'll understand why it is I hate cats and dogs. It was high time to go, for the pool was getting quite crowded with the birds and the animals that had fallen into it. There was a duck, and a dodo, a lory, and an eaglet, and several other curious creatures. Alice led the way, and the whole party swam to the shore. And that's it for chapter 2. I'll see you all in the next chapter, okay, friends? I'll see you all